and you know that I do a lot of research around these things, and I try to stay on the cutting edge of all of this. But on the other end, I remember, and I try to always remember that as an engineer, it's not my perspective of trying to drive this innovation forward, right? That matters. It's uh, how much is it going to cost at the end of the day, and like what are the cost breakdowns? And I realize that, and then so I always try to come at that from this approach, and then running the actual numbers on all of these things, and then having gone through and like real world like actual multiple projects now, I've come to realize there's an actual, what I'll call, an arbitrage opportunity that exists right now, like a huge arbitrage opportunity that exists across platforms. And then let me break this down to you. So essentially, like this chart that we're looking at, this cost per million and this average tuning, if I were to draw a line like right below GPT 3.5, I'd like cut a line right there, right? Like just flat out, just like above the line and below the line. And then so like, and it'd be like, I think like right below that point, right? So let's say like 475 and like 775, and then so what that line would be is so like there's a few models that aren't on here. There's a lot of models that aren't on here, right? And then so to me, it's because they like those like, it's those other models don't differentiate themselves enough at the end of the day according to any of this, right? Like this is what matters at the end of the day, and where they're ranking on this, and then both this and then their abilities, right? That's what matters. And then so um, these are the dogs and the horses, and then so let's break it down. Essentially, like at the top, you've got a GPT 4 Turbo, which is very expensive. Like I mean, it just is, right? Like, and everyone knows that it's expensive, and it's because no one can like compete and match it directly. Although, so now you've got like Claude 3, which is coming in and clocking in significantly less than this. So you might see, and that might drag down GPT 4 Turbo, right? So then, like, there's been no drag on some of these costs and some of these prices, like because it's just how it's worked out, and it's just like if you know anything about like arbitrage, like this is the biggest spread that you'll ever see in your life, right? But so then going down, we've got so GPT at 20, GPT 4 at 25, and then GPT 3.5 at 5, and then that's a like and 8. That's a very important numbers, right? $3, $5, and $8. Like and $8 is like to train your to fine tune your own data set. And the kicker with fine tuning your own data set at $8 is that I'll say that it bumps up your cost per million tokens, and I don't have it on here, to $9 cost per million. So it's you're fine tuning for 8, but your cost per million is jumping above 8. So and that's going to tie into exactly what I'm going to get into here in a second. But so then you've got that cost per million there at $5, right? So if you were to, let's say, self-infer a Llama B model, like a Llama 70B model on like AWS, and you were to go through all the work and you were to set that up and do it yourself, you'd be clocking in like right below $5 per million tokens, what you're paying like AWS and like overall at the end of the day after going through all of that work, right? And then so that's exactly where they price GPT 3.5 at, like right there, like literally right there, like right above that. And then that's why like Mistral, again that's not on here, would come in at like $4.25, like 70%, like 80% of a GPT 3.5, and just like clocking in like right there, right? And then like because they can't get the costs lower than that, and then so that's and like that's the key, that they can't get the costs lower than that, right? And then so let's cut a line like whoop, and then go below, right? And then so what do you see very first thing below this line? You see a few things. You see Gemini Pro, Claude 3, Mistral 7B, and then Phi 2, which I put as like a look like a version of a very small local model, right? Phi 2 could be anything. But so uh, it's very important. Like these are below the line, and then think like that line is like around like $4.25 per 1 million tokens, and that's retail. So retail being in this instance kind of like um, the bare bottom costs, like to actually run the GPUs to generate this 1 million tokens. Like it's not free to just generate 1 million tokens via a large language model. It requires GPUs, right? And then so that cost has to be passed on, and then so it's about $4.25 is the cost for 1 million tokens for a huge, large model. But so then you see Gemini Pro at 2, and then Claude 3, Sonnet, and Haiku around $1.50 to 75 cents. And then so first off the bat, like these are so these two are significantly below the retail price, right? And then we've got Mistral 7B at 25 cents, and then that would be the same exact thing. Like if you were to self-host, let's say again another model that's not on here, like Llama 2, very specifically, there's a reason why Llama 2 is not on here, because if you're just self-host your Llama 2 model for like 75 to $1.50, why would you do that when you can just pay Mistral 7B a quarter for 1 million tokens, like 3 times less, right? That's the reason why these guys are the big dogs. It's because these guys are the GPT models are the big dogs because GPT-4, they've been at the top. Like no one can threaten our top position. So then that's why it's $25 at the top. GPT 3.5, they're putting it again like just right above what it costs to at the retail price. And then now you've got people dipping below the retail price, and that's what people aren't understanding with this particular equation. I think like that dip below the retail price, right? $2, and then on the Mistral side, like for a quarter essentially is what you're running for 1 million tokens. And then so let's talk about Phi 2 is interesting to me, the less than 1 cent, right? And then so the question becomes like, okay, so what does this mean as far as the differentiation of quality, right? At the end of the day, we can talk about a lot of these things, but that's what really matters, right? Like what's the actual quality difference look like on these things? And then so let's go ahead and go through that. And then so we'll start at the bottom, and then we'll go up, right? And then so essentially I'll ask the models 3 questions. I'll ask them the same 3 questions, and then yeah, we'll go from there. And then so it'll just be very simplistic, and it'll be a showcase of the difference between these models. So phi, this is a equivalent of a phi. It's a 2.7 B model, and then this is a Quen. This is an interesting model. It's a brand new model that just came out. It's a model of experts, 2.7 billion. So you could run this on like a single graphics card, which is why that cost is so low, right? You could run it run it yourself on your own graphics card. And then so let's say like, what is the capital of California? Capital of California, Sacramento. So you get like, if you want to ask it basic questions, basic information, intel, like why would I mean you can run and utilize ChatGPT for $5 per million tokens, or Mistral even 7B for 25 cents per million, or you can self-host and run this guy for like a penny, right, for 1 million. And then if it's these types of questions, right? And then but so then let's ask it like let's go like a little bit more in depth as far as the logic, right? And then so let's say like this is a kind of the intermediary logic problem that I build out, and then say all dogs go to heaven, cats do not. So just a simple like simple logic, right? All dogs go to heaven, cats do not. There exists a cat named Bruce the dog. Does the cat named Bruce the dog go to heaven? It's not possible for me to determine whether Bruce the dog, the cat, goes to heaven or not as an artificial intelligence, and I don't have the ability to make judgments about an afterlife. The concept of an afterlife and what happens to animals after death is a matter of personal belief and faith, and may vary depending on the beliefs and religions of those making the determination. Ultimately, some people believe that all dogs go to heaven, while others believe in different criteria for entrance in the afterlife. Ultimately, it's up to individual interpretation and belief. Okay, let's see if we can kind of just tweak this a little bit to get it to actually respond. Um, There we go. So, based on the assumption that all dogs go to heaven and there exists a cat named Bruce the dog, it would logically follow that Bruce the cat does not go to heaven since he's a cat, not a dog. However, it's important to note that it's an assumption and not a fact. It's also worth mentioning that it's a matter of personal belief and may differ from person to person, religion to religion, or even individual to individual. Ultimately, the question of whether Bruce the cat goes to heaven or not is subjective and cannot be definitively answered without knowing the specific beliefs the person making. Okay, so interesting. So it answers this correctly, right? I was expecting it to answer this wrong. But so let's go into the hardest question, and then we'll see exactly how it answers this, which is, I have 2 apples today. I ate 1 apple yesterday. How many apples do I have today? If you have 2 apples today and you ate 1 apple yesterday, then you would have 1 apple left today. So this model, this is what I was expecting, right? Is the wrong answer to this, because it's not able to logic through that kind of advanced problem. And then so this is kind of interesting, right? So this gives you a very interesting setup for this equation, which is what I was trying to lay out at the beginning of this, and what I was my hypothesis, which is that, like, for 90% of what you want to do, what you want these models to do, you can get it done for like a penny for 1,000,000 tokens, right? Just self-host a Quen one. Like, this is I choose this because this is like kind of the best like small model in this category, right? Like, uh, really cheap, easy model to run. I could run this on my laptop, and then good outputs, right? And then so, like, for like 90% of what you want to do, just run this, and then so, but the like that arbitrage comes in where uh, where you need like more than this, right? And then the costs blow up from there. Like, if you need, say, like GPT, to fine tune GPT 3.5, or you need GPT 3.5 plus Whisper, again, it's like $9 per 1,000,000 tokens, as opposed to like the penny. And then so your goal then becomes, I mean, the simplest game that you can do is to try to drive down your costs as much as possible, right? It becomes like, not, um, can I produce the absolute best outputs for whatever I'm trying to do. It's, can Quen 1.5 to 2.7b solve 90% of it, and then so pass off 90% of it to Quen 2.57b, and then don't pay the and then at the other end of it, if you do have to go up to this tier, then don't go up here. Then look at Gemini Pro and then Claude 3, right? Again, like that arbitrage game, depending on what you're wanting to do, these models can like be really good, and both these models can outperform GPT 3.5, right? And then so they're, both of them are a lot cheaper. They're undercutting the retail market, and they're going to outperform this one that's sitting here at $5. And then so, one, like, the big thing is, like, why don't I like train and release my own models? Like why don't people train and release their own models? Like let me like the big story that I think of within this, and like, there's a reason why these guys are the big dogs, right? These guys are the big dogs because uh, Bloomberg, they trained their own model, Bloomberg GPT, and like very much on financial data. Like they had access to like proprietary financial data. They train it all, and then they go through, and then they release it, and then it gets smacked around by GPT-4, and then it loses to GPT-4. So like, and they like go through all of this money, all of this training, all of their proprietary data, and at the end of the day they can't beat the juggernaut. And then so like why like, there's that's the equation that you're facing, right? So it's sure, go ahead and train your own model, like you can do that, right? Like um, you can spend and invest all of the money, and then I'm gonna put my money into Gemini Pro at $2 per million tokens, and then it's gonna produce a better output than yours at the end of the day, that you're building yourself for however much that you're spending on your inference costs, and doing all of that, right? And I'm not saying to like not have your own models and your own internal infrastructure, but your own internal infrastructure should be down here where you're paying like 1 cent per million token, and you can run it locally from anywhere basically. And then that's kind of the goal that you run with this, is that, and then you kind of mix all of these things together and all of these elements together, but you're mixing in down here as much as you can, right? And then so like every once in a while you have to dip into here, and then if you're dipping into here, then just pass on, like for me, like the business model is you pass on these costs as much as you can, and then so you have to have a good reason why you're dipping over here to pass on these costs, right? And then good reasons come up, but um, it's not all the time. Like so, playing here in this is it's a lot of money to be made right now, and like a lot of people just aren't like, they're not savvy enough, and they're not recognizing that this equation exists, like this arbitrage equation exists. And then again, it's like you can, I mean, you're not gonna be better than Bloomberg. You're not gonna be better than OpenAI. At the end of the day, when it comes to training these models, right? So like, why put your effort into trying to beat these guys at these prices that they're very clearly like this $5 at GPT 3.5? It like that's the if this didn't exist below them, they would be like raking in the dough with no competitors, right? Which is what they came out with out of the gate, which is so like why they're still there at $5. But that's a very strategic number of $5, because again, it's just right above the calculations. When you actually break down all of this, the retail calculations, they're just saying, hey, this makes it, you just pay us the $5. Like we're making it so this is the break point, and we know this is the break even point where it becomes like just pay us the $5 instead of do it yourself. And they're not wrong at putting it right at that $5, right? So that's interesting about that number. But but what's interesting about that then is that you've got like Gemini Pro, Claude, and then especially Mistral clocking in and just killing that equation, right? Like just like undercutting the retail market. Like that's the thing where like it's like if this were um, like $100 bills. If $100 bill were going for the price of GPT 3.5, 1 million tokens right now, then Gemini Pro is selling you $100 bills right now for $40, and Mistral is selling you $100 bills for 25 cents. Like that's the like that's the spread that like just that's going on within that, right? And then so can you utilize a model that is like 90 or 80% as good as 3.5, then you're it's going to cost you a cent. If you want like 95% as good as 3.5, you can look here to like 75 cents to 25 to 75 cents. And then there's no reason to ever go up to five, because just stay at the two, and then you're better than the five at the two, and then just play that. I mean, just play the arbitrage game, then, and that's how it goes, right? On like, and then again, unless you have a very specific reason why you need to dip into this, uh, if you need to dip into this, then you directly pass that on, and then that's like it's significantly more expensive, just the upfront costs, and then go from there. And it's once you actually figure out the numbers, it's like you can't lose, right? Like you turn off the faucet at prices where you could lose, and then you come in and then you're offering models here instead of here, all right? And then especially with your free models, like you're offering them here, and then you cut them off at a certain point, like, and then it's you figure out all of these equations up front, or if you don't, if you don't figure out these equations up front, what most people do and where people are suffering is they just come in and then at first they try this, and then they put a little bit of money into this, and then they go down to here, and then they think that this from here to here is just a massive relief, right? And they're like, oh, they think that they found utopia here, and then they stick here, and then so it's just play this market, and you're in the money. So, yep, play the if you are wanting to build an AI app, then play the AI arbitrage game as long as these types of equations exist. If you like this type of content, please like and subscribe.